Jia is crossing the road when suddenly, truck appears. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Two birds are reading a piece of paper. It says that a long time ago, in a small village, there was an honest lumberjack and an angel who could not return to heaven because she lost her winged robe. Life was going good until one day, the lumberjack hears the angel calling for him while he is cutting down a tree. The angel found her robe while cleaning the house. The angel is excited, but the lumberjack is horrified. The angel continues by saying that the robe was hidden right under their noses because it was at the back of the closet. She rhetorically asks who could have possibly put it there. The lumberjack puts his head down in shame, for he is the one who hid the robe. He did it because angels can't fly back to heaven without it, so they are forced to live in the human world. The lumberjack thought he was clever by stealing it while the angel was taking a bath. But the angel knew the lumberjack's scheme from the very beginning. She could have taken the robe out of the closet the moment it was put there, but she didn't. Because the angel knows, she starts to tease the lumberjack. The angel playfully suggests that the lumberjack hid the robe so she would be forced to live with the lumberjack. But simple teasing is too much for the lumberjack to handle, and he admits to it. The lumberjack profusely apologizes and justifies it by saying it was all in the name of love. The angel is shocked that the lumberjack admitted it without any protest. But instead of leaving, she has other plans. If he does her one favor, he will be forgiven. The favor is whenever they are together, the lumberjack can't wear his glasses. The lumberjack is shocked because he can't see without them. Then, the angel accidentally drops his glasses into the water, meaning that the lumberjack can't use them anymore. She continues by calling the lumberjack clueless. The angel has been dropping hints that she doesn't like his glasses, and he just hasn't picked up on it. The robe is irrelevant to the situation since she doesn't plan on going back to heaven anyway. As long as he gets rid of his glasses, she will stay with him. Then, the angel puts her hands on the lumberjack's cheeks and starts to slowly lean toward him, almost as if they are going to kiss. Before their lips touch, the great mountain spirit suddenly comes out of the water with two pairs of glasses and asks which one belongs to the lumberjack. Suddenly, Jia screams neither of them and wakes up in a hospital bed. She did not become an isekai protagonist. She is flustered that it was all a dream and is confused why she had such a strange dream. The story of the lumberjack and the angel ends with them starting a business of selling sticky rice cakes to tigers. Jia calls her mother to inform her of the accident. She is horrified, but Jia reveals that it wasn't really an accident. Truck Kun stopped right in front of her and barely grazed her. She is unhurt, but she did faint, which could be attributed to being tired since she is job hunting. The doctor told Jia to inform her guardian of the accident, but her mother points out that Minchiel is her guardian and asks what he said about it. Jia is shocked. She thought her guardian was still her mom. Upon looking up the definition of guardian, Jia discovers that Minchiel is her guardian now. Suddenly, Minchiel appears next to Jia covered in sweat and asks if she is okay. Jia is confused why he is here, but Minchiel says that her mother called him. Then, Minchiel notices a man talking to the doctor in the distance and approaches him. Minchiel towers over the man and menacingly asks if he is the one who hurt his wife. Jia is shocked. She never knew Minchiel could make a face like that. Upon seeing Minchiel, the man bows down and apologizes for what he's done. The doctor tells Minchiel to calm down so they can discuss his family members' symptoms. When Jia hears, she remembers that Minchiel and her are now family. This means that Minchiel is there whenever she needs him. Minchiel confirms Jia is okay, but instead of leaving, he continues to ask if Jia is okay and wants to stay with her. Eventually, Minchiel leaves to go back to work, but she wishes that Minchiel would have stayed with her longer. Jia is now walking in the hospital and needs to focus on getting a job. Suddenly, she runs into Yenduek. Jia explains that she fainted because she almost got hit by a truck con, and Yenduek asks where Jia is going while walking toward his sports car. Whenever Jia sees a sports car, she knows how much it costs and doesn't dare to walk near it. She always wondered what type of people drive those types of cars. Now she knows. As they are going, Jia's hair is in her face, and Yenduek is coughing. He says that perhaps he should have used one of his other cars, and Jia is shocked that he has another car. Yenduek reveals that he has several cars, but they are all rentals. Jia thought he had won the lottery because how else could he afford them? But Yenduek says that he already won the lottery. Jia is intrigued, but then Yenduek reveals that he hit the jackpot when he ran into Jia. Jia is angry that he keeps using cheap pickup lines. Yenduek gets serious and asks why Jia is dressed in a suit. Jia says that she was on her way to an interview because she needs money, and Yenduek is speechless. Yenduek points out that Jia got a lot of money from her days as an author and asks if she already used it all up, not wanting to reveal what actually happened. Jia just says that a lot of things happened recently and there isn't much left. Yenduek is laughing that the Jia Han is willing to work a job to pay the bills. Before he can continue, Jia flips him off and tells him that she isn't going to write again. Yenduek points out that Jia saying that before he said anything shows that she has the writer's spirit in her. Then, Yenduek suggests that Jia work at a cafe. Jia is confused, but Yenduek says that he knows a rich guy who runs one for fun who pays very well even though there aren't many customers. Jia is confused how something like that can exist. But Yenduek hands her his business card and tells Jia to call him if she is interested because he can get her an interview. Jia is now walking home and acknowledges that working at the cafe sounds like a good offer. But she doesn't want to owe Yenduek anything because it would hurt her pride. Then, Jia spots Minchiel standing looking at his phone. She deduces that he has been standing there waiting so they can walk home together. Jia is glad and starts to run toward Minchiel. Jia collides with Minchiel and Minchiel is shocked to see Jia there. Jia playfully asks Minchiel questions regarding him being there. Minchiel just says yes and Jia asks if something is wrong with Minchiel's head since he didn't elaborate. Then, Jia realizes that she is hugging Minchiel in public and everyone is looking at them. Jia backs away, but then Minchiel hugs Jia and asks why she hasn't been answering his calls. Jia's phone was on silent and Minchiel was worried. Jia confirms that she is okay and wants to stop hugging because people are staring. But Minchiel insists they continue for a little long. Minchiel is always so nice to Jia that she feels bad for making him worry. She needs to put her pride aside to prevent Minchiel from worrying. So, she declares that she got a job working at a cafe, which means that she won't be jobless anymore. She will be heading to work tomorrow and she suggests that they go out and celebrate. Jia asks if Minchiel will risk losing all of his gains by having a cheat day today, and Minchiel says yes. Jia is glad to see Minchiel not worrying anymore. Him smiling is much better than seeing him worried. The next day, Jia arrives at the interview, and the owner is surprised Jia is on time. That aside, Jia is shocked because the owner is none other than Yenju. To recap what happened so far, Jia was living a completely normal life. Suddenly, she rediscovered the importance of working, but she didn't like any of the job offers she received so far. Then, she got a call from her old boss who was recruiting her for a job. Jia was suspicious of his offer, but she didn't realize Yenduek would trick her like this. As Jia is trying to figure out what to do, Yenju is reading off her resume. Jia dropped out of college, worked in a call center for 2 years, had a few part-time jobs, but no real work experience. Yenju notices that Jia is distracted and asks what's wrong. Jia doesn't know what to do since she hasn't spoken to Yenju for years. But, Yenju interrupts Jia's thinking by telling her to not worry because she wouldn't have interviewed Jia if she wasn't serious about hiring her. Yenju never thought she would meet Jia again and thinks she has seen enough of her resume. Then, she sees that Jia is married. Yenju is confused and takes off her glasses to confirm she saw it right. Upon closer inspection, she realizes Jia is actually married and is shocked. Jia recalls that Yenju Choi was the person responsible for all the good memories in college. Also, observe how Jia's old hair color is the same as Yenju's current hair color. Maybe this means Yenju hasn't moved on from the past. Yenju is the one who made Jia think that ambition is cool even though Jia had no aspirations. Today, Yenju has written dozens of novels, 3 of which are now TV shows. She only continued to grow after her debut and doesn't need luck like Jia did. But now, she is Jia's boss. Yenju is laughing at how Jia is married. She never imagined that the same girl who stayed up all night reading web novels in Yenju's room would be married. Jia reveals that her husband is her childhood friend and Yenju asks how they got married. Jia avoids the question. To prove that she is actually married, Jia shows her pictures from her honeymoon and Yenju is impressed. Jia thought their conversation would be awkward since they haven't seen each other in years. But it was actually quite pleasant and it feels as if they saw each other yesterday. Jia remembers Yenju always being awkward, but now that she has vast sums of money, perhaps her confidence comes from having enough to spare. It is as if there is a spotlight on Yenju. Before Jia leaves, she asks if it's really okay to be working full-time at the cafe. But, Yenju says it doesn't matter since she's the owner and can do whatever she wants. Jia's first day is on Monday and before her taxi leaves, Jia says it's been nice seeing Yenju. Yenju smiles and tells Jia to get home safe. Jia is now home and celebrating that she got a job. Mincheol is concerned. Yenju is at home and looking at an old picture of her and Jia. She smiles and says that she should be the one thanking Jia, implying she has been playing for D chess the entire time and this is all part of her master plan. Meanwhile, Jia and Mincheol are blowing out candles on the cake to celebrate. It is now Monday and Jia is being introduced to the staff of Second Cafe. Yenju mentions that Jia and her went to college together. Yenju introduces the rest of the staff to Jia. Siu Lee is one of their top baristas, and if Jia doesn't know what to do, he is the one to ask. The next person is Nari Ju. But they both recognize each other from when Nari was seducing Mincheol at the gym and they are shocked to see each other. Nari turned 25 years old this year and most people think she is narcissistic when she says she has great style and good looks. She wears earbuds without music so that she can hear people comment how good she looks. She even takes a route 10 minutes longer than necessary to show off to the common folk. She also works at Second Cafe, which at first glance seems ordinary, but it is far from it. It offers unmatched benefits and since the last manager left, Nari was next in line to become manager. If she became manager, she would be living a life where she had everything she ever wanted. But Jia is the new manager. If only Jia hadn't shown up, she would have become manager. So, Nari complains to Yenju despite Siu being there longer and contributing far more than her. She demands an explanation since Jia doesn't have a lot of experience in the industry, but Yenju counters by saying she is the owner so she can do whatever she wants, essentially saying skill issue to Nari as an explanation. Regardless, Nari is still outraged and wonders how Jia can have a hot husband and be friends with the famous author. Before things get awkward, Nari apologizes to Jia about what happened at the gym, but Jia doesn't make a big deal out of it and says that it is in the past now so it doesn't matter. Nari is taken aback and thinks Jia not getting mad was cool. Nari still thinks Jia doesn't know the first thing about running a cafe and can't accept her as the manager. Jia asks Nari for help, but Nari is caught off guard and her voice cracks while saying sure. Jia is asking about a recipe and Nari realizes that she doesn't have to actually help Jia. So, she taunts Jia by saying that it's embarrassing that the manager doesn't know this. But, Jia says that's exactly why she's asking so she knows when there are customers. Nari is shocked that Jia isn't flustered. Jia continues to ask questions despite Nari being rude and she realizes that Jia isn't bad looking. Nari gets embarrassed and tells Jia to ask Siu for help while walking away and discreetly flipping off Jia. She thinks Jia is annoying. Soon, an old man arrives and compliments Nari's appearance. She is annoyed that this customer is here of all people. The man asks for Nari's number and when she tries to give him the store number, he gets mad because he spent a lot of money at the cafe. The least Nari could do is give him her number. Nari is annoyed and wishes he came when Siu or the boss was here. Suddenly, Jia appears next to Nari and says that Nari should give him her number since the customer is always right. Nari is shocked. The man is excited that someone finally understands him, and Jia introduces herself as the new manager. Nari doesn't know what to do and can't believe what Jia is doing. Jia is writing something down on paper and hands it to the man, saying that it is the number he wanted. The man is excited because he just wants to take Nari on a drive and get something to eat together. But then he sees the number on the paper. It is 911, the emergency number. The man is outraged and Jia insists that he dial it. The man is angry and the entire cafe is staring at them. Jia suggests that she could dial the number for him, but this only makes the man more mad. The man pulls the classic, "Do you know who I am?" card. Jia uses an no reverse card and asks if the man knows who she is. The man is subdued and calmly says no, wishes them a great day, and leaves. After he leaves, Jia sighs and comments how she almost showed her true colors back there. Nari thanks Jia for her help and asks if Jia is okay because it might cause trouble with the boss or cause rumors. But Jia nonchalantly says that she will cross that bridge when she gets there so there's no need to worry about something that hasn't even happened yet. Even if something happens, she would take full responsibility. Nari jokingly says it's fine as long as Jia takes full responsibility. Nari thought Jia wasn't the type of person to take responsibility and acknowledges that Jia standing up for her was pretty awesome. Then, Nari remembers that Jia is her enemy since she stole Mincheol in her manager position even though Jia didn't steal Mincheol in the first place. Suddenly, another customer enters the cafe and asks for one hot iced Americano. Jia and Nari are speechless. It is villain number 2, the hot iced lady. She is a villain who occasionally pops up and chews you out if you get her order wrong. The lady continues by saying she wasn't expecting the same qualità and servizio as a cafe in Milano, but them not responding to her is rude. Gia looks frustrated and repeats the lady's order in her weird accent. Then, Gia gives the lady a cup of ice and a hot Americano so she can adjust how much ice she wants. The lady says Gia passes and leaves. Nari is shocked that that's all she had to do to satisfy the lady. Nari also notices that Gia does whatever she wants and seems fun. Gia continues to do strange things such as confronting loud customers and telling them they will take legal action for being too loud. When they complain, Gia calls the boss who gives them a refund and orders them to leave or her lawyers will file a lawsuit. Gia then asks Siyu for salt to cleanse the cafe. After observing Gia, Nari realizes that Gia is someone who makes everyone happy, so no wonder people want to be friends with her. Then, Nari notices Siyu staring at Gia and covers his eyes so she doesn't take Siyu away from her. In a black car, Yenduek asks the hot-iced lady how Gia was. She says that she is disappointed because Gia is clearly not satisfied with working in a cafe. The lady then asks why Yenduek is introducing Gia to her now. The lady is Yomi Na, the CEO of Yomi Entertainment. The cafe is now closed and Gia is saying bye to Nari and Siyu. A lot happened today, but nothing major. But there is one last thing Gia needs to take care of and tells a man with a box over his head to come out because she saw him hiding there for a while. Mincheol is shocked that Gia spotted him because of his perfect disguise, which is casual clothing. They are now walking home and Mincheol is still confused how Gia recognized him because he is wearing very different clothing and had a box on his head. Gia acknowledges that Mincheol put in some effort and asks why he is here, because he doesn't drink coffee and the cafe is out of the way. Mincheol can't think of anything and eventually says that he has a new workout routine, which is walking before going to the gym instead of running at the gym. Gia is surprised because she thought Mincheol was here to pick her up and smirks at Mincheol. Soon, Gia trips and before she hits the floor, she is in her bed with her face in her pillow. Her conversation was going so well until she tripped and fell. She thought she heard a crack from Mincheol's shoulder when he caught her, and she thinks something is wrong because he looked awful at the gym. Gia hopes Mincheol is okay and goes to check on Mincheol. Upon opening the door, she is greeted to Mincheol shirtless. Gia gets embarrassed and backs away, saying she is going to take a walk. But Mincheol is confused and Gia is now sitting in his gaming chair. Mincheol explains that he pulled his shoulder and back muscles when he caught Gia and was just about to put on pain relief patches. Gia is confused how Mincheol was going to put them on since he can barely reach behind himself. But Mincheol insists that he can. First, you lay the patches on the floor. Then, you roll around on the floor until they are stuck to your body. When you stand up, they should be on properly. But, they are not. Gia says she will put them on his back for him. Mincheol insists that he can do it himself. But Gia is already prepping another patch and tells Mincheol to be quiet. As Gia is inspecting Mincheol's back, she realizes nothing has changed since when they were kids. They would always scratch each other's back or apply ointment when it was out of reach. The only difference now is that Mincheol's back is a lot wider. Gia wonders what Mincheol eats to get his back that wide. Now that she thinks about it, she was on his back during the honeymoon. Gia starts to touch Mincheol's back and Mincheol calls out to Gia. Gia stops and Mincheol asks why Gia is rubbing his back. Gia is embarrassed and doesn't have an explanation other than his back is incredibly attractive. Gia saves herself by saying his shoulders are tense and starts massaging them. Mincheol is concerned, but Gia insists that his shoulders are like rocks. Gia is now massaging Mincheol back, and she feels this position can only lead to disaster. Mincheol looks at Gia without his glasses and comments how her nails are digging into his back, which hurts. Gia is embarrassed because Mincheol isn't wearing his glasses and apologizes. Gia continues the massage and acknowledges that she needs to get her mind out of the gutter because it is just a massage. 10 minutes later, Gia's hands hurt because Mincheol's back is massive. Maybe stepping on his back would have been more effective like she used to do for her dad. Regardless, Mincheol thanks Gia for the massage since he can move around just fine now. Gia is glad that Mincheol is happy and starts to head back to her room to sleep. But Mincheol stops her and insists he give Gia a shoulder massage in return. Gia declines in an attempt to escape, saying that she doesn't have any knots. But Mincheol didn't let that slide. Gia is now sitting on the bed as Mincheol is preparing to annihilate Gia's shoulders. Mincheol asks Gia to move her hair to the front and when she does, Mincheol begins his massage. But Gia is nervous for no reason and she thinks Mincheol isn't nervous. Mincheol gently places his hand on Jia's shoulder, and Jia makes a noise. Mincheol thinks Jia must be in pain, but the pain is not in her shoulders, it is in her heart. Jia's heart is pounding very fast and loud, and she thinks Mincheol can hear it. Even if he can't hear it, surely he can feel it. But Mincheol doesn't say anything. Did he not pick up on it, or is he pretending he didn't notice? Regardless, the massage continues, and suddenly, Jia screams in pain because Mincheol is pressing too hard. It feels like her shoulders are going to rip off, and Jia tightly grabs Mincheol's arm with her nails and digs into it. This causes Jia to fall down on her back in pain, and when she opens her eyes, Mincheol is over her without his glasses. Jia is embarrassed. More importantly, the angle they are at is problematic. Jia is holding on the bed sheets tightly, as if she is bracing for impact. She is concerned about what underwear she wore today and can't remember. But then she realizes she wore a matching set to feel more confident at work. Jia is relieved but then gets embarrassed. Why is she relieved that her underwear isn't mismatched? It's almost as if she is looking forward to doing it with Mincheol. Jia puckers up her lips and waits for Mincheol to kiss her. But Mincheol just stays there and after 10 seconds, she pushes Mincheol off her. Jia is annoyed that Mincheol didn't make a move. Nothing is going right for Jia today. She even messed up opening up a snack. But it wasn't really a failure. But Jia really thought Mincheol would kiss her. Maybe she was the only one expecting to kiss. Jia gets embarrassed at the thought of this. Mincheol and Jia both don't know what to do. But then Mincheol gets up and calls for Jia. Jia asks what's up, and Mincheol hesitates and says that it's not good for her back to sit crouched down. When she sits, she would push her chest out to keep her back healthy. Jia makes her back straight and Mincheol gives her a thumbs up. Mincheol goes to take a shower despite just putting on the patches. Jia is now laying down on the sofa and is disappointed Mincheol didn't come over to give her a kiss. She thinks she is a fool for falling for stuff like that over and over again, but in reality, Mincheol is frustrated about what happened and is slamming the bathroom walls. He looks completely drained and stares at a pink toothbrush, which is presumably Jia's. Then, he picks it up. Jia is looking at the picture from their honeymoon and thinks Mincheol and her are what people call a trickster couple. Then, Mincheol appears and his sudden appearance scares Jia. Mincheol says he brushed his teeth, and Jia is confused how that's relevant. Mincheol reveals that he ate cucumbers during dinner and Jia doesn't like the taste of cucumbers, which is why he didn't kiss her. Mincheol asks if he can do it now and Jia says yes. Then, Mincheol kisses Jia. After kissing once, Mincheol takes off his glasses and continues to kiss Jia. Jia is annoyed that Mincheol is so strict about the rules and thinks he should be more flexible. Suddenly, Mincheol puts his hand on Jia's waist and Jia is shocked by this. At Jia Han Construction, Miss Emotion tells Miss Reason that Mincheol Construction is on strike again. Miss Reason is annoyed since there's a lot to do. Then, a giant machine appears beside them with Mr. Flexibility from Mincheol Construction in it, who says they should just work. Mr. Flexibility uses his machine to move the dirt while Miss Reason and Miss Emotion are in awe. Jia is shocked that Mincheol is being flexible, but she thinks this is a little too much. Jia thinks Mincheol needs to turn on the blinker before he turns, but he did, and almost a little too much. Jia is impressed, but then realizes Mincheol is a guy, so it was bound to happen. But Jia doesn't know what to do because she didn't think something like this would happen today. Mincheol slides Jia's shirt slightly up and starts to slide his hand in. Before too much happens, a phone buzzes. Mincheol and Jia don't know what to do and Mincheol goes in for another kiss. But Jia stops him and tells Mincheol to answer the phone. Mincheol goes to answer it and Jia is embarrassed. Jia is now sleeping and questioning why she said that. If she was drunk, she would have gone for it without hesitation, but she did it sober. She recalls them kissing and gets embarrassed again and starts violently punching a pillow. Jia questions if she has come to like Mincheol that much and doesn't know when it started. She didn't expect it to happen and starts to question what their relationship is anyway. Jia starts to ponder the possibilities, but is interrupted by Mincheol knocking on the door asking to come in. Jia is confused and lets Mincheol in. Mincheol is on his knees and looks nervous, and Jia is confused about what he is doing. Jia thinks that maybe he wants to continue, but then Mincheol says that his mom is coming over this weekend and asks Jia if that's okay. Jia is shocked. She tries to avoid the question by asking if Mincheol meant Jia's mother is coming, but he confirms that his mother will be in town for business this weekend. Mincheol doesn't know why and they both look uncomfortable. Jia is still awkward around Mincheol's mother. In school, the bell rings and students rush out of the classrooms. This phase is called the stormy period of puberty. This normally happens in middle school and is where you can't control the energy inside you. Everyone wants to stand out and everything on the lunch menu tastes awful. Gia is ascending the school wall and her friend asks if it's really okay. Gia says it is because they feed prisoners of war better than them, so it's against the Geneva Convention. Gia's friend is concerned about what will happen if they get caught, but Gia says it's worth it. Then, Gia and her friend get caught by a lady holding a baguette and she has already subdued another escaping student. She directs them to get down, and then smacks Gia and her friends behind with the baguette with such force that they can barely stand. This isn't violence. This is merely corporal punishment, and the teacher in charge of it at Gia's school was Minchel's mother. Gia thought she wouldn't be punished since it is Minchel's mother, but she was wrong. She actually used the baguette to punish Gia harder. To be fair, Gia did a lot to deserve punishment back then. But now that teacher is her mother-in-law. Gia is now watching baseball and says it reminds her of the old days. Minchul is confused since he didn't know Gia used to play baseball, but she confirms. Her position was the ball and Minchul's mother was the batter. Then, Minchul's mother, whose name is Jizian Zhang, arrives. They are now in a car and Gia notices that Minchul's mother is extremely healthy and wonders what she eats. Then, Minchul's mother comments how Minchul actually picked her up, which makes her happy even though Minchul's mother declines every time Minchul offers to pick her up. She asks if it was her daughter-in-law's ideas and Gia is confused until she realizes she is the daughter-in-law. Gia confirms that it is her, but since she is the daughter-in-law, she doesn't know how to call Minchul's mother. Gia texts Minchul for help, so naturally Minchul ignores it. Because of this, Gia asks Minchul to look at his texts, but Minchul's mother is concerned that they still call each other by their names. Gia and Minchul are both terrified about what she means by this, and Gia asks her to explain. Minchul's mom is just thinking out loud and says that ever since they talked about getting married, she felt some sort of incompatibility between them. This is a dangerous situation for Gia and Minchul. She continues by saying they were a bit awkward for people who were about to get married. Minchul's mom was always the type to pick up on the little things fast, especially when it came to Gia. Of course she is suspicious because they decided to get married an hour after Minchul got signed up for the dating service. But, Minchul's mom says that maybe she's reading into too much, but points out that newlywed couples would normally not be able to get their hands off each other and Gia and Minchul don't even call each other using pet names, which is strange. Gia diffuses the situation by saying that they only call each other by name occasionally, and Minchul's mom asks what they call each other usually. Gia tries to come up with something and recalls that they always call each other by name. Then, Gia says hey. Minchul's mother is confused that they call each other hey, and Gia looks away in embarrassment. Before Minchul's mom can continue, Gia yells out babe and tells Minchul to check his texts. Gia is embarrassed that she called Minchul babe. Minchul's mom deduces that they call each other babe and Minchul tells Gia to call his mom ma'am, which isn't very helpful. They are now at the apartment and the first round of the visit begins, which is home inspection. Minchul's mom slides her finger on a surface and closely inspects it. Then, she calls for Gia and Gia thinks this is going to be like one of the scenes in a soap opera between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. Then, Gia's mom reveals that she saw a soap opera where the mother-in-law nags the daughter-in-law and wanted to try it out. Gia is relieved but is annoyed about the joke. But, Minchul's mom says that Gia should clean up more since there's a lot of dust. Gia is concerned, but then Minchul's mom says that she's kidding and asks Minchul where she can unpack. Round 1 was a defeat for Gia. Round 2 is lunch. They are eating and Minchul's mom says the food is okay, but it is too sweet for her taste. Gia apologizes and says that her mom made it and she should have tasted it before serving. Next time, she will tell her mom to make it less sweet. But, what Minchul's mom really meant is that it needs more rice to balance it out. This was 4 out of 5 stars thanks to Gia's mom. Round 2 was a close save. Round 3 is clean up and tea. They are all drinking tea, except Minchul who is drinking a protein shake. But since Minchul and his mom aren't talkative and Gia is too nervous to talk, it is silent. Gia doesn't know what to do and believes Minchul's mom isn't convinced their marriage is legitimate. Gia needs to distract her with something. Gia looks at Minchul and gets an idea. She asks if Minchul ever washes his shirt and Gia thinks Minchul's mom immediately got suspicious because Gia called Minchul by his name. But, she is also curious because he always wears that red shirt. Minchul is being targeted and shows them his diverse wardrobe, consisting of exclusively the same red shirt. This is a challenge in today. Jia and Minchul's mom team up to fix his wardrobe. This day will forever be referred to as the first uprising of the Red Devils. During the 2002 World Cup, everyone was cheering, including Jia and Minchul. South Korea made it to the round of 16, and the Red Devil shirts sold like crazy. Almost everyone has one. But Minchul took it a step further and ordered them in bulk because he thought it was a good deal. Minchul is being dragged to the clothing store. When they arrive, the employee asks what she can help them with, and Jia and Minchul's mom say they need help with Minchul. They go to the men's section, and Jia realizes that even if she gets rid of the red shirts, Minchul still has checkered shirts, which are problematic. She needs to make sure Minchul doesn't buy more of those. Suddenly, Minchul's mom is fascinated by the vast array of checkered shirts. Jia now understands why he has so many of them, because checkered shirts are his mom's style. Minchul's mom insists he tries them on, but Minchul doesn't want to. She then asks Jia what color she likes, and she says both look fine despite not wanting either of them. Jia recently discovered why Minchul's wardrobe is so bad. Firstly, he is an engineer, which means he prioritizes comfortability over everything else. Jia thought this was the only reason until now. Minchul's mom likes checkered pattern shirts and pressures him into buying them. Jia doesn't understand why she likes check patterns. Maybe it's because she needs a graph on her fur when she scratches it. Despite their disinterest, the store employee loves the idea of Minchul getting a checkered pattern shirt. This is likely to make the customer buy it. The employee asks what Minchul does for work, and when he answers, she says the clothes suit him well. She even mentions their 3+3 event, but Jia doesn't care. She gives Minchul some clothes to try on. When he does, the store employee is impressed because Minchul looks very hot. Jia is impressed and thinks this is the bare minimum for Minchul's wardrobe. It would be great if he dressed well, but Minchul looks drained. Then, Minchul's mom calls Jia, using the word daughter-in-law, and comments how the outfits are too plain and suggests he tries the checkered shirts. The employee is shocked upon hearing that Jia is the daughter-in-law. Jia is confused why the employee isn't stepping in to help and is nowhere near them. She is actually now behind the counter taking a call, and Jia thinks it's because the employee is trying to avoid an argument. But the employee was probably interested in Minchul and doesn't want to get involved now that she knows he is married. Minchul's mom asks which side he agrees with, and he doesn't know. Upon careful consideration, Minchul masterfully avoids the question by saying that all he cares about is comfort, and they are both comfortable. They then go to buy the clothes, and Jia acknowledges that not arguing was the best option and thinks he's grown a little. But Jia really would have preferred if Minchul took her side. Then, Minchul whispers into Jia's ear that he actually liked the ones she chose better. Jia is shocked and Minchul is avoiding eye contact. Jia is glad and thinks that Minchul said that so her feelings didn't get hurt. Then, Jia says that Minchul won't get brownie points for complimenting her while pounding on his back. But then Jia realizes that Minchul's mom saw them, and Minchul's mom looks embarrassed. She tells them that this is a public space and turns around in embarrassment. Seeing her reaction gives Jia an idea. Jia tells Minchul that they are going to make his mom less suspicious of their marriage and tells him the plan. They meet back up with Minchul's mom, and Jia and Minchul are wearing matching couple shirts. Minchul's mom coughs in disbelief, and Jia justifies it by saying they were on sale. Jia came up with this plan because she remembered that her parents tend to show affection toward each other in public. Whenever they did this, Minchul's mom got embarrassed, which means that she can't deal with romance. Jia's plan is foolproof. They just need to excessively flirt in front of Minchul's mom, and she will stop being suspicious. So, Jia starts by calling out Minchul and telling to walk slower in a cute manner. Minchul is confused and suddenly, he turns into a rooster. But, the plan works since Minchul's mom is too embarrassed to say anything. Jia is glad. They are now at a dessert cafe, and Jia tells Minchul to say ah as she is holding a spoonful of the dessert. Minchul insists that he can feed himself, but Jia puts the spoon in Minchul's mouth anyway. But, the plan is not flawless since acting all lovey-dovey too quickly is suspicious, so this is a huge gamble. While feeding Minchul, she gets some on his cheek and decides to wipe it with her finger and eat it. Jia is not giving Minchul's mom a break from her insanity. But, Jia doing this alone isn't enough to clear suspicions. She needs Minchul to cooperate and asks him to help do something couple-like. So, Minchul tries to feed Jia and calls her a little birdie. Jia and Minchul's mom are shocked. He went a little too far. They continued this until they got home. Minchul's mom acknowledges that they are very close and suggests she leave so as to not intrude. But Jia insists she stays a few nights. But, Minchul's mom insists she leaves, which means Jia's operation was a huge success. Suddenly, it starts raining, so Mincheol's mom needs to stay the night. Jia and Mincheol are now in the same room and are getting ready to sleep. Jia suggests she sleeps on the floor, but Mincheol says no and insists they sleep together because they are married. Jia is embarrassed, but as they are getting into bed, Mincheol's mom peeks through the door and asks them to come out. Upon seeing them in bed, Mincheol's mom thinks they are about to partake in spicy relations and says she'll be back in the morning. But Jia confirms that it's not like that. 15 minutes earlier, Jia and Mincheol are in another room and Mincheol's mom asks why there's a bed in a room that isn't Mincheol's. Jia is nervous that they are going to get caught since they actually sleep in separate beds. Before Jia can make up an excuse, Mincheol says he sleep talks and moves around while sleeping, which made Jia uncomfortable, so he bought a bed for Jia a few days ago so she can sleep well. Jia is impressed by Mincheol taking initiative and giving a sensible answer for once. She never would have thought the dense muscle-head gamer who only cares about not losing his gains could be so sensible. Mincheol's mom seems somewhat convinced until she points out that the bed looks well used, which is a contradiction, and asks if they bought it second-hand. Jia and Mincheol are shocked. Back to the present, Jia is still worried that Mincheol's mom caught onto their scheme even though they are sharing a room. But then Mincheol's mom said she read something interesting recently and asks if they heard of a show Widow Couple. She says she will send it to them later, wishes them good night and leaves the room. Jia and Mincheol are now alone and decided to sleep together for the first time. Mincheol suggests that he leaves now that his mom left, but Jia knows that they must sleep in the same bed to avoid suspicion. Mincheol suggests they sleep in opposite directions to maximize their space and comfort, but Jia doesn't like it, so they sleep in the same direction. They are back to back, which is embarrassing, but it would look like they are a real couple if Mincheol's mom walks in. As this is happening, Mincheol's mom is holding an envelope in her room. The only problem now is that Jia can feel everything Mincheol does, like his heartbeat and his breathing because of their position. Jia is embarrassed, but then she sees Mincheol shaking with his hand in a weird position and asks if Mincheol is unwell. Mincheol says that he's not sick, but when he sleeps on his side, his head doesn't match the pillow height because his shoulders are so jacked. But Mincheol says it's fine because he will get used to it. Suddenly, Mincheol apologizes for speaking up when his mom asked about the bed. To his surprise, Jia says that he did well because her mind went blank during that situation. Jia is glad, and she tells Mincheol to lie down on his back so he is comfortable. Mincheol is confused, but then Jia rests her head on his arm. If she does this, they can be comfortable and save space. But Jia is now bored and decides to quiz Mincheol. Jia says she wants something from Mincheol and asks Mincheol to guess as she is repeatedly touching his chest. Mincheol asks if he can have a guess, but Jia says no and says that he gets 3 points if he gets it right. Mincheol thinks he figured it out and says that Jia wants a savings account with 1 billion won. The money would also be clean, so she doesn't have to call Saul Goodman to launder the money. This answer is tempting, but Jia says it's wrong. Mincheol is confused, but Jia says it's something he can give her right now as a hint. Mincheol asks if it is chicken feet. Jia says no. He says if she wants Minchoko. Jia threatens to murder Mincheol. Jia is frustrated and says that Mincheol is pretending to be stupid. Suddenly, Mincheol's arms start to wrap around Jia and Jia panics. Mincheol is now hugging Jia and Jia is embarrassed and shocked. Jia asks why he is doing this and Mincheol responds by asking if this is what she wanted from the start. But Jia is too embarrassed to answer and Mincheol keeps asking until Jia says that he is right and holds on to Mincheol. Mincheol is glad, but Jia doesn't know what to make of the situation. Mincheol is smooth, but Jia's plan was to make fun of him before bed for fun. But Mincheol's reaction was different than expected. Mincheol then looks at Jia and touches her ear. Jia is shocked and doesn't know why he is doing this. Jia is concerned that Mincheol wants to engage in a loud spicy activity and doesn't know what to do since Mincheol's mom is in the next room. Jia thinks this is going too fast until she realizes that Mincheol put an earplug in her ear. Mincheol did this so Jia could sleep in peace, but Jia is confused what he means by this. Mincheol says that Jia is scared of lightning, but Jia is confused how it is relevant and denies it. Mincheol is confused because she flinches every time there is lightning because it is raining. But Jia thinks that she was like that because of Mincheol's actions. Mincheol continues saying that if she isn't scared, then why did she say that Mincheol was right when he hugged her? After pondering the question, Jia gets embarrassed because she knows it was really because Mincheol hugged her. Then Jia admits that she is very scared of the lightning and buries her head into Mincheol's chest. Mincheol thinks his guess was correct. Immediately after, he puts his sleeping mask on and wishes Jia good night. Jia thinks Mincheol is sly like a fox. He is extremely dense sometimes, but also does what Jia subconsciously wants and she can't predict it. Moments later, Jia realizes that Mincheol is just dense. He is giving her a bear hug while sleeping and Jia is trapped. She tries to escape but Mincheol's power even when asleep is simply too much to handle. If she moves the wrong way, she will be split in half. Jia calls out to Mincheol to wake up, but he continues to hug her. In the morning, Mincheol's mom is drinking a liquid and sees Mouse, Mincheol's cat, attempting to enter a room. When Mincheol's mom lets Mouse in, she looks inside to see Mincheol and Jia peacefully sleeping in unorthodox positions and not even being covered by the sheets. Mincheol's mom leaves the room. Later in the morning, Jia is awake and is staring down the meal Mincheol's mom made, which is rice with various side dishes. Looking at such a display makes Jia's stomach upset. This is bad. Jia didn't get enough sleep. They are now eating and Jia thinks this is a scene right out of a morning drama. She anticipates she will get scolded and slapped with kimchi, but Mincheol's mom probably won't go that far. Mincheol's mom sees Jia isn't eating and asks if what's wrong and suggests that it isn't to Jia's liking. Jia says that she is fine, but she thinks that she will upset her stomach if she doesn't eat it. Then, Mincheol comments how Jia's eyes are red and asks if Jia is not sleeping. Jia says that she is like this due to Mincheol's terrible sleeping habits. Suddenly, Mincheol's mom asks Jia if she can make time after they eat so they can talk one-on-one. Jia is shocked and doesn't know what Mincheol's mom wants to say to her. Jia and Mincheol's mom are now walking outside and Jia tries to figure out why she is here. She thinks they acted like a lovey-dovey couple, but they are against a formidable enemy, so maybe she could sense that Jia was just acting and that she has been caught. Mincheol's mom stops and presents Jia with an envelope. Jia is confused, but then Mincheol's mom clarifies that it is money, similar to what mother-in-laws do for daughter-in-laws in dramas. She tells Jia to do something with Mincheol and she will give her more if she needs it. She is probably referring to divorce, but it isn't clear. Jia asks if she is joking and attempts to get out of the situation. Mincheol's mom says she was kidding and Jia is confused. Mincheol's mom wanted to joke around to lighten the mood since Jia seemed tense. Jia thinks it's hard to tell when Mincheol's mom makes a joke. Jia is confused about what's inside the envelope and Mincheol's mom tells her to look inside. Their marriage contract is inside and Jia is shocked. Mincheol's mom says that she wasn't specifically looking for it, but she couldn't sleep and thought she would just give them some pocket money and leave. But then, she wanted to see their wedding photos and found it while searching for them. She asks Jia if she and Mincheol have a sham marriage. Jia is shocked and knows that their operation has been compromised. Jia tries to cover it up by saying it's not what it looks like, a typical move that clearly indicates that it's exactly what it looks like. But, Jia knows that their execution was sloppy. They should have hit it somewhere harder to find than behind their wedding pictures. Jia doesn't know what to do since Mincheol's mom has hard evidence of what they did. Jia thinks she is screwed. But then, Mincheol's mom reveals that it's fine because she knew about it from the start. Jia is confused. Mincheol's mom tells Jia to look at it from her perspective. Mincheol came home on New Year's and she signed him up for a marriage matchmaker. Only 2 hours later, he brought over a girl that he decided to marry, and the girl just happened to be Jia, someone Mincheol knew his entire life. Of course it was suspicious, but Mincheol's mom is glad that he married Jia because deep down, she had always wished for this outcome. Mincheol's mom tells Jia to take good care of Mincheol and says that she will cheer them on. Jia is confused because she thought Mincheol's mom was going to break them up since she knew that their marriage was a sham. But, Mincheol's mom sees no point in breaking up a perfectly functioning couple. If Jia and Mincheol wanted to break up, then they should figure that out for themselves since they are adults. Jia didn't realize this until now. Mincheol's mom was concerned about their relationship before visiting, but after seeing them in action, she is relieved to see that they are both happy. She is also relieved to see that Jia is the same person she knew a long time ago. Jia is taken aback by this. Mincheol's mom is now in a taxi and comments how dealing with her must have been tiring. Jia denies this. Before she leaves, Mincheol's mom says that she wants their firstborn to be a daughter. Jia is embarrassed and Mincheol's mom leaves. Jia and Mincheol survived Mincheol's mom's visit despite being a fake couple. They even got pocket money, which makes it seem like they scammed Minchul's mom. Regardless, Jia and Minchul compliment each other on how they did well. Suddenly, Minchul asks if he can ask Jia something. Jia doesn't respond, but Minchul asks his question anyway. He asks Jia if his mother said anything weird. As Jia ponders this, she recalls how she told Minchul's mom that their marriage isn't loveless because she has fallen for Minchul. Minchul's mom thought this was just an act, but Jia insisted that it is real. Instead of answering Minchul's question, she starts vigorously pounding on Minchul's back and realizes that this needs to be done now. Jia asks Minchul if they should start going out for real. Minchul is confused. Jia attempts to justify it by saying that to avoid situations like this where they have to act like a lovey-dovey couple, they should just become a real couple. Suddenly, Minchul grabs Jia's hand and says that he is fine with becoming a real couple. But the reason why he wants to is not for Jia's reason. Minchul pins Jia to the wall and declares that he likes Jia and says they should go out. Jia is confused and asks if Minchul likes her romantically, and Minchul nods his head to confirm this. Jia asks when he started to feel this way, and Minchul says not since when, even now, which means that he has probably liked Jia for a long time. Jia is confused by this, and Minchul just says that he likes Jia now. Jia looks away and is embarrassed. Then she says that if Minchul really likes her, then if he kisses her in the next 5 seconds, she will determine how to move forward. Minchul is shocked and is concerned that they are doing this in public. Jia gets embarrassed and comments that Minchul already slammed her against the wall and held her hands, so it does matter. If Minchul kisses her in the next 5 seconds, they will start going out. Jia starts counting down from 5 and Minchul is leaning in to kiss Jia. But before he can do it, a female enters the elevator they are in and Minchul and Jia separate. The female is confused and then realizes what is happening, so she starts to leave the elevator. But Jia stops her, saying that it's not like that, even though it is exactly like that. They are riding the elevator, and the female is sweating profusely. Due to the awkward atmosphere, it feels like the elevator is going very slowly. Jia attempts to calm down and reflect on what just happened. What she did was too fast. Her sense of judgment is off today. Suddenly, Minchul taps on Jia's shoulder and directs her to look at her phone. Minchul texted her if it's fine if he kisses her 5 seconds from now since they were interrupted. Jia is shocked and asks Minchul if he is crazy because someone is in front of them. Suddenly, Minchul grabs Jia's shoulder with a single hand and swiftly pulls her toward him. Minchul's mom is in a car and looking through a book containing a picture of Jia and Minchul sleeping together as kids in the same position they were sleeping in last night. She thinks it would be nice if they were more honest with each other. Minchul pulls Jia in and aggressively kisses her. Upon separating, Jia quickly pulls herself back in and intensely kisses Minchul. Jia's forehead hit Minchul's glasses, so after he adjusted those, they continued to kiss. With this, Minchul and Jia are now dating. The female in the elevator with them is disgusted and is going to pretend she didn't see that. During Jia and Minchul's primary school days, there was a doodle drawn on the board implying that Jia and Minchul are in love with each other. 20 years later, the doodle became the truth, and they are now in love with each other. Later at the cafe, Nari asks if Jia has seen a dermatologist recently since her skin is glowing. Jia happily responds by saying that Nari won't get anything out of complimenting her. Jia's aura is emitting a blinding light, but Nari didn't compliment Jia, she just wants to know which place Jia went to. Then, Nari realizes that perhaps Jia's expression is what actually changed and suggests that Jia engaged in intense adult activities with Minchul. Jia gets embarrassed and tells Nari to do her job. To defend herself, Nari clings to Siyu for protection and comments how the more Jia denies it, the more true it is. Jia didn't know her expression changed that much. This is probably because Minchul has been bringing her gifts after he comes home from work. Having someone think about her and share her happiness with is the best feeling. However, every day after work, Minchul continues to bring home large displays of food as a gift. Jia accepts them, but is not impressed. It is too much food. Even Mouse agrees that it is too much. Jia knows that Minchul enjoys bringing her gifts, but she doesn't want to kill Minchul's vibe because he is doing it out of love for her. Jia spots the scale in the distance and upon stepping on it, a beam of light comes out of the apartment, indicating that the Jia has gained weight. Minchul is now banned from bringing food on his way back from work. Minchul is confused, but Jia says that if he continues to bring her food, she will gain weight. Then she corrects herself, saying that she already gained weight. Minchul comments how everything has 0 calories if you enjoy it, but Mincheol didn't even eat any of the food. He has been too busy trying to not lose his gains by eating chicken breast. So Gia suggests that Mincheol get her something other than food if he is going to get a gift. Mincheol points out how Gia once said that she prefers consumable items rather than novelty items, and Gia is shocked he remembered. But Mincheol concedes and says he will get something else, like flowers. Gia is fine with this as long as it's not very often. Mincheol returns from work the next day with a massive array of flowers. Gia is taken aback by this. Mincheol technically did exactly what Gia said to do because they are flowers. Mincheol asks Gia what's wrong, and Gia asks Mincheol why he bought it. Mincheol justifies it by saying that Gia said flowers were okay, and since bigger is better, he bought that. Mincheol noticed they were on sale, but Gia says the price isn't the problem. It's the scale of the gift. Gia sits down and points out to Mincheol that his gifts are a burden. Mincheol is confused, but Gia says that it got annoying after the first 2 times. She is grateful for them because they are gifts, but they are too much and made Gia think if she got in a relationship only to receive gifts. Mincheol understands and apologizes. Gia says he doesn't have to apologize and asks why Mincheol got her so many gifts in the first place. Mincheol says that he did it to make her happy, and Gia says that is exactly the problem. Gia doesn't want gifts, she wants Mincheol, but doesn't finish her sentence. Upon hearing what she just said, Gia gets embarrassed and walks away saying that buying gifts is banned. But, before she can leave, Mincheol grabs her arm and he tells her to finish her sentence. Gia clarifies by saying that there are other ways Mincheol can make Gia happy other than buying her gifts. So, Mincheol asks what these things are. Gia is confused, but Mincheol clarifies that Gia said she wants something from him other than gifts. Mincheol seductively grabs Gia's hand and says that he must know this critical information so he doesn't make the mistake again. Gia and Mincheol blankly stare at each other until Gia grins and says that Mincheol is amazing. Mincheol is confused, but Gia gets angry that Mincheol is pretending to know again. She continues by saying that recently, Mincheol pretends to not be aware of the situation and uses this to mess with her. Gia takes Mincheol's glasses off his face and puts it on her face, saying that Mincheol is acting all high and mighty. Mincheol is still confused and asks Gia to clarify. He asks if he did something wrong, and Gia says no while putting his glasses back on his face. As Gia is walking away, she says that she is actually complimenting Mincheol and gives him 80 to Gia points today, which means that he needs to try harder next time. Mincheol is confused what Gia points are, and Gia stops in her tracks and is shocked that she needs to explain such a simple concept to higher life form like Mincheol. Gia explains that it is a rating for how close she was to falling for Mincheol a second time. Gia then answers Mincheol's previous question by saying that Mincheol doesn't need to overthink it and should just act natural. This is enough to make Gia happy. Gia then heads into the room to go to bed, and Mincheol is left speechless on the couch. Mincheol proceeds to intensely investigate his hand and recalls holding hands with Gia while asking himself what his usual self really is. Gia is on the other side of the door and immediately leans back on the door in embarrassment for making that speech. She tried to act all tough and couldn't be honest with herself. Gia was the one who wasn't acting naturally. But Gia thinks Mincheol is a fool because if he pushed a little harder, the situation could have gotten spicy. Suddenly, Mincheol opens the door without knocking and pushes Gia on the floor in the process. Mincheol came to say that he thought about it and understood what Gia meant when she told him to act like his usual self and asks Gia if she is referring to the thing they do that has the letters X. Mincheol is standing with a stone-cold expression, but Gia is confused until she realizes Mincheol is referring to spicy time. Gia realizes that she made a fatal mistake by giving Mincheol space and decides she needs to take back control of the situation. So naturally, Gia looks away from Mincheol and says that Mincheol can do whatever he wants. Mincheol is confused by Gia's reaction, but Gia just accepts it and will worry about it after it's done. Mincheol suggests they head to the location now. Suddenly, they are at the gym while Gia is squatting and Mincheol is cheering her on. Gia realizes that Mincheol was referring to exercise. Exercise technically is the usual, so this shouldn't be a surprise. But Gia is struggling because she has been slacking off due to work. They are now headed back home and Gia is riding Mincheol's back because she took leg day too far. But even now, Gia is still happy and doesn't regret dating Mincheol. The next day, Suyin is traversing the streets while eating a Choco Taco when she sees Sangyu walking with a female who is wrapped around his arm. Suyin stops in her tracks at this sight and starts having a panic attack, so severe that she drops her Choco Taco. Thank you for watching. Please consider leaving a like, subscribing and becoming a channel member for access to videos early. You can pick back up in the story by starting at chapter 59. The link to it is in the description. See you next time.